Now I want to take a look at some of the basic foot maneuvers you will see throughout Kenpo. The first of which is called a drag step. I'll do it from a side view. So if I make this my 12 o'clock, I'm facing my 12 o'clock in a right neutral bow. I'm going to drag up my left foot and step through. Drag, step. Drag, step. So it makes sense, right? And I don't have to go completely feet together. I could just drag a little bit and step. You can see I'm inching my way towards the opponent. I probably wouldn't do 3 or 4 like that in a row, but you can imagine if I just had to elbow or drag up and kick. It just helps cover that distance, that inch or two that's necessary, depending on the circumstance. Let's try some going the other way. So this is my 12. I can drag up with my back foot and step again into my neutral bow with my lead foot. Drag, step. The second idea is just kind of the opposite of that. I can step, drag. So I can step a little wider than a neutral bow and drag up. Step, drag. Maybe I hammer fist or strike with the first one, and then I can drag up with another outward elbow. So I could strike and strike again. So it sort of separates that. That maneuver, step, and then drag. So drag, step, step, drag. The next one I want to look at is probably the most difficult out of all of them, and it's called the push drag. Again, I'll demonstrate a few from the side view. I'll send some going this way. I think the easiest thing to think about is fencing. I've never really done any fencing before, at least not up to now. But imagine, if you will, that I have a foil in my hand, a fencing sword, and I'm in a right neutral bow, and this is my 12 o'clock. And you think about jabbing or poking towards the opponent. Most people, if you give them the mindset of fencing, they'll naturally do this. They'll naturally do the push drag. A few different ways we can look at it. The easiest way is to simply lift the front foot just a hair or two off the ground. And then with the back foot, you're going to push. And then you can probably hear it on the carpet there, I'm also dragging to then remain to my stance. It's not a replacement. It's not this. We'll look at that in a moment. Notice in the replacement, my feet are coming together, and then I'm stepping out. It is not a replacement. My feet are always shoulder width apart. They never come together. Let's think of it this way. What I want you to do is lift your right foot very high into the air. And imagine you have a puddle of mud here in front of you. And so you have to leap over that puddle of mud. Let's go back and try that again. Leaping over the mud. Now, let's pretend like that puddle of mud isn't quite as big. So you're not going to lift your foot quite as high, and you're not going to jump quite as far. It's just a little puddle of mud. And now, let's say it's really small, and you only care about your front foot, you don't care about your back foot. So you're going to sort of hop over with the front foot and drag your back foot through the puddle of mud. You see what happened there? I lifted my front foot, and I dragged my back foot through the mud. That's all that's happening. So it's like a lazy leap. You can think of it in a silly way like that, lazy leap. So let's try that on the other side. We'll go this way. Again, you lift really high, and it's a big puddle you're going through. And then the second time through, maybe not so big. It's just a little puddle. And then the third time, it's a very lazy leap, and you really only care about your left foot. And you're dragging your right foot through that puddle of mud. So that's one way to think about it. So we've looked at the drag step, the step drag, and the push drag. When I come back, we'll look at a few more. Now I want to take a look at the replacement foot maneuver. Sometimes you may hear me just simply call it a shuffle, but more specifically it is called a replacement. And I think it's exclusively used when executing a kick. I can't ever really think of a hand strike that you would use while using this foot maneuver. Let's take a look. So this is what it looks like. Notice that my back foot, it almost looks like a drag step. And if I go again, if this is now my 12, I could drag step, or I could do it quickly and give it a little shuffle. So we call that a replacement foot maneuver. Clearly, you could do that while executing a front kick or a side kick. It just helps you cover ground quickly. And it also adds an element of marriage of gravity at the end of that kick, that sinking feeling. You could even argue backup mass. So that idea is called a replacement. And it usually doesn't take much. You could find a long room and just... Now don't do this. I'll do it on the diagonal. I don't want you to do this. Don't sashay down the floor, right? Because you're probably not going to do this in the street. Do it once. Do it once and find your stance. So that idea is called the replacement. The next two ideas I want to look at are the front crossover and the rear crossover. Front crossover looks like this. Again, if this is now my 12 and I'm facing 12 in a right neutral bow, and I have a very great distance to overcome, I may actually step all the way through into a twist stance and then step back out in my neutral bow. You can see how much room that covers. If I do a drag step, or a step drag, or a push drag, even just those three maneuvers didn't even take me to the end of the room here. But if I do a front crossover step, I've covered just about the same distance as those three other foot maneuvers combined. Neither one is better than the other. They all have their purpose, and the purpose is to gauge that distance between you and the opponent, depending on what weapon you're going to use. So in this case, I'm using, it's called a front crossover. I'm now facing my 12 in a left front twist stance, and I'm stepping through into a right neutral bow. I'll do that towards you. So this is a front crossover, stepping through. Front crossover, stepping through. Make sure you do both sides. The other idea we can use is a rear crossover, step through. So now instead of going to a front twist, my left foot will actually go behind, and we'll call that a left rear twist or left reverse twist. Stepping through with the left, because my left foot is actually closer to the opponent, and then I can step through. Let's try that one more time. I'll do it facing you. So here I'm facing you in a right neutral bow. I can do a left rear crossover and step through. Notice how similar that is to a drag step. I could just drag step. And I would say most of the time this is what we're going to employ, is a drag step. But again, if necessary, you can do a full rear crossover, stepping through. In this case, you could use a different stance. You could sort of come in backwards to the opponent and use what's called a reverse bow. So we have the front crossover, stepping in front, or the rear crossover. And those are just some of the basic foot maneuvers that you will see.